In this video today, we're going to talk about sketching a graph using a table. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example of this. So the first one is just a simple linear equation. Y equals negative 3x plus 5. Now we sketch this using a table. We're going to make a little t-chart. And in the t-chart, we're going to put x values and y values. Now we're basically going to select random values for x. It's important to plug in positive values, it's important to plug in 0, and it's important to plug in a negative value. Some will require you to plug in more than 3 or 4 points just to make sure that we have a good solid sketch of the graph. Again, this is a linear equation, so technically we really only need 2 points, but we're going to go ahead and do more than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with just the x value. Let's start with a negative value. Let's start with negative 1. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this negative 1 and I'm going to put it in for x. So what that gives me is y equals negative 3 times negative 1 plus 5. And when I solve that, negative 3 times negative 1 is 3 plus 5 gives me 8. So one of my points is going to be negative 1, 8. I'm also going to plug in 0. If I plug in 0, negative 3 times 0 is 0 plus 5, so that would be 5. And that would tell me my y-intercept. I'm also going to plug in a positive value. Let's also plug in 1 and let's plug in 2. If I plug in 1, negative 3 times 1 is negative 3 plus 5 gives me 2. And if I plug in 2, negative 3 times 2 is negative 6, plus 5 is negative 1. Okay, now if I go over to my graph, negative 1, 8, so go over 1, and I'm going to go up 8, that's going to be a little bit off my graph up here at the top. 0, 5, 1, 2, and 2, negative 1. And if I take then and connect those dots, that gives me a nice, good, rough sketch of my graph. Now again, this is a situation where it's a linear equation. Let's take a look at one where it's not a linear equation. So let me go ahead and erase this. So if we take a look at one where we're sketching it and it's not a linear equation, the process is still the same. I'm still going to plug in values for x in order to find this. Again, the reason I'm picking x is because I already have y by itself, and because I've got y by itself, I'm going to pick values for x. So let me pick a negative value first. Let's plug in negative 1. If I plug in negative 1 again, just to go through that process, y equals 1 minus negative 1 squared. Well, what that ends up being is 1 minus 1, so that gets me 0. So let's go ahead and plot that on the graph. Negative 1, 0, it'll be right there. Let's go ahead and plug in 0. If I plug in 0, 0 squared is 0, that gives me 1. So 0, 1, be right here. And then let's go ahead and plug in 1, just like we did on the other one, 1 and 2. If I plug in 1, 1 minus 1 squared, that's 1 minus 1 or 0. And then let's plug in 2. 2 squared is 4, 1 minus 4 is negative 3. So 2, negative 3. Now again, in this particular graph, having just 4 points may not be enough information for us to make this graph. Now I know this is a parabola, and we're going to learn in the next video about symmetry, about how symmetry can help us with these graphs. Again, since this is a parabola, my parabola is going to look something like this. And it's going to be downward shaping, and that's what my graphs or my sketch is going to look like in this case.